BBC Sounds. Music, radio, podcasts.
5 Live Boxing.
What a weekend of boxing it was. This is the 5 Live Boxing podcast with me, Steve Bunce. And on Saturday night in Manchester, in front of 19,000 people, it sold out in 6 minutes, the oldest unsettled rivalry in British boxing was finished, finally. Kell Brook, 35, Amir Khan, 35, 15 years of hate. In the end, 6 rounds of pain. All over. Done. Kell is the winner. No more dispute. One fight, one night, one result. What next? I caught up with Kell Brook in the dressing room after the fight, and he was brutally honest about the fight and his future. And Dominic Ingle will join me to talk about where Kell goes from here. Perhaps he'll fight again. Perhaps he'll walk away. Perhaps Dominic will tell us. Who knows? And Natasha Jonas, Miss GB, London 2012 Olympian, twice failed to win a world title as a professional. She finally got it right. Third time lucky. She is the new WBO super welterweight champion of the world. I like the sound of that. We'll hear from Tasha. And joining me on this podcast, it's the birthday boy, Carl Frampton. Carl, before we get into discussing the wrongs and the rights and where we might go from here, what was your initial reaction after the first bell, 10 seconds into the fight, Kell Brook and Amir Khan?
I kind of expected it a little bit. I'd picked Brook and I'd picked him to win in about, I'd say at around 8, so I wasn't far off. But I thought Khan may have been leading at the point of a stoppage, but Khan wasn't in the fight at all. Although Sky were trying to make a claim for it to the commentary, he was just bullied and pushed around from start to finish.
You know, it really was. Let's just get a bit of background here. These two between them, 81 fights, 44 versions of titles, 16 world titles, over 50 top of the bills on British TV going back, well, in Khan's case, to 2005 when he turned professional. In Brook's case, to about 2011 and 12 when he started topping Eddie Hearn bills. Massive parts of British boxing over such a long time. And a slow building hatred. Boxing News, the trade paper, did a piece last week, Carl, talking about how they'd first put these two together in something like 2008. That's 14 years ago. And I was with them last week. And hand on heart, I like to consider myself a bit of a Svengali when it comes to looking in a fighter's eyes and having a look at their body and the way they're acting. And I actually thought, in the build-up, I thought Khan looked fresher. I thought Khan looked stronger. I thought Khan had that little bit of focus in his eyes. But I tell you what, I changed my mind, and this is not being an after-timer. I changed my mind after about 10 seconds, because it looked, once the bell sounded, that Amir Khan, a man that's been with us for 18 years, topping the bill under so much pressure, he looked like he had absolutely nothing left, Carl.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I was kind of strongly favouring Brook the whole way, right up until I spoke to Haroon Khan, Amir's brother, the day of the fight, and he kind of made me change my mind a little bit, but I still stuck with Brook, but it was more one-sided than I thought it was going to be, but it was a shell of Amir Khan. But in saying that, I think size has a real importance in the fight. I don't think Kell Brook, although he looked very good, but he looked very good against a bad Amir Khan. I think that size was really important, and I think it probably was going to have an effect if that fight happened when it was first talked about, and whenever you 2008, I think you were talking about there, a long time ago.
Mentioned, yeah.
He's just too big, and that's what happens in this sport. You know, two good guys. Normally the bigger one wins.
Yeah, I'm like you, and I think a lot of people are as well, apart from the people that are lying about how they thought the fight would be. But I thought that Khan would be far more competitive. I thought it would be a much harder fight for whoever was going to win it. I thought it was going to be a harder fight. And I did flip-flop a little bit in the week. But on the day, I certainly switched over to Kell. I just felt he looked stronger. I was looking at him in the changing room before the fight and even on the walk to the ring. And when they attempted to unsettle him, Khan's people, by making Kell change his gloves, he just looked that much fresher. And Khan just looked, and he seemed to know Khan. And, you know, you can see it up close, Carl. He seemed to know very early on in the fight that it was, I hate to say it, a lost cause. We know he's brave. We know he's got guts. You know, he was smashed to bits afterwards. I was seeing him in the medical room when he was giving bloods to the drug inspectors, and he was really battered and bruised, and he never turned away. He continued. But I think he realised very early in that fight that it was a lost cause.
I think so. He get hit and hurt inside about 90 seconds with.
Yeah.
People say a stiff jab. It was more than a jab because it was kind of, he threw his right hand and he jumped in with his left hand. So it was a big left hand. And, but his legs just, he's so brave, Khan, always brave. And he always gets hurt in every fight that he's involved in. And he stays in there for as long as he can. He never got dropped, which credit to him. But he just, after the round one, it just didn't look like there was any chance of him winning.
And I know he's 35, and we all get older. And 35 isn't necessarily the age when all boxers have to walk away. But I don't necessarily think it's just the fact he's 35. It's the fact that since the Olympics when he was 17, apart from some of the easy fights when he first turned pro, he's been in. You mentioned it there. He's always in hard fights. He's been in about 15 absolute blockbusters. The type of fights. No. I'm being realistic. That no fighter should have to endure that many hard fights like that. It's that's what ages you in the ring. You can be at 20, you can be 40 like Bernard Hopkins or 45 and be fresh. But Khan at 35, he was showing the signs of all of those wars.
Yeah, I agree, and this is a really important topic. I'm just reading a book at the minute by Tris Dixon called Damage, which is about brain injury in boxing, and it's such an important subject. And it's more than the fights, and it's more than people getting knocked out. It's the build up, it's the camps, it's the hundreds of rounds of sparring you do in the lead up to a fight, which will, for a maximum amount of time, be 12 rounds. That's the maximum you can fight for. But sometimes 200 rounds of sparring and preparation against big guys and stuff. And this is all trauma in your head. And some people can stay in the game longer than others. Some people don't spar and don't be involved in hard fights like other guys do. But there's got to be a time where this is just, it's not good for your health, not good for your head. And I don't know if he's openly said it, but that should be the end for Amir. And probably Brooke as well, if I'm being honest.
Yeah, that's interesting. We'll hear from Brooke and we'll hear from Dominic Ingle a bit later on, and I'll find out from Dom what his personal plans are and also what he'd favour. It's interesting you mentioned Trish's book there, Damage, and you mentioned the damage that's done not just during the spotlight fight, not just during the fight. It is that long build up. Let me ask you, Carl, during the last 2 or 3 fights, or the 2 or 3 real fights towards the end of your career, had you tapered and changed your sparring and training to take into account the wear and tear of of your personal years in the ring?
Yeah, I done a lot less rounds of sparring, and I know people say, well, your best years were with the McGuigans and stuff like that, but I feel like because of the hard graft that I done in the first part of my career, I was successful for a short period of time. It probably took away from the second half of my career, and I was already maybe on the slide a little bit. When I'm trying to think about it and be rational here, and I was a notoriously hard sparrer, and probably there was 5 times I would have sparred more than 200 rounds for a camp, and people don't understand how tough it is. And it's like this macho. I used to get great pride in telling people that I'm sparring 200 rounds with guys like Gary Corcoran, who fought for the world welterweight title. Asinya Byfield, who's a light middleweight.
Light middleweight.
These are the types of sparring partners I had, and it was wars every day. And I felt big and macho about telling people that, but it was stupid in hindsight. And it definitely changed. I definitely changed and reduced the amount of sparring that I'd done.
In the time, since you stopped fighting, in the last year of your boxing career, Carl, and times you spent in the gym, are you seeing any change of attitude in younger fighters preparing? Because this is a subject that maybe we should deal with at a later date. But are you seeing a 25-year-old version of you pulling back in the ring? Did you notice that with younger fighters? I'm thinking about perhaps Josh Taylor, a guy that you've been around in the gym. And
no, I don't really see it, and I done it with myself. But I suppose it was a conversation that I had with Jamie Moore and Nigel Travis when I first joined the gym, and I told them the amount of rounds I'd normally spar, and they were like, "What? That is mental. That's insane." And it took a while for me to kind of realize that it was probably too much, and I wanted to spar more and more. But after a while, I just got you don't need any more than 80, 100 rounds. I know how to fight. I know how to get fit for a fight. You don't need to be taking all the damage in the gym.
I think there's probably an argument that once you get to your established level, world champion level, the rare level that you got to, that there's probably an argument you need a lot less than 100 rounds in a build up to a fight. I mean, yeah. I'll be absolutely honest, because you say you know you can take a shot, you know you can fight, and I'm just working out. I agree. I think the pulling back on championship fighters that have been working so hard and putting in so many rounds. I think there's definitely a call to pull back in certain areas.
You've got guys, and people say, well, then what about Bernard Hopkins? But Bernard Hopkins didn't spar. He didn't spar. He knew how to fight. Then he got fit for fights, and he changed his approach to fights, and he even changed his style of a fighter as he got older. And then people say Manny Pacquiao and stuff. But what touch wood. Manny Pacquiao is going to be fine, but who knows what he's going to be like in 10 or 15 or 20 years' time?
Absolutely.
And that's what people forget.
Because my understanding is that Manny's a hard sparrer because Freddie Roach is a hard coach for that. I mean, in fact, Amir Khan, who we're talking about here, or started talking about here, he talks about those legendary sessions in Freddie Roach's gym when he first went to California, when he first left London after being knocked out, left Manchester after being knocked out by Prescott, and he talks about those hard days in that gym. And Matt Macklin tells great stories about the people queuing up the spar. Mexicans he'd never heard of. I think a guy he'd never heard of, he never saw again, broke his nose and gave him a boxing lesson. But again, they're fun stories, they're macho stories, but they're to use, to paraphrase Trish's book, they're damaging stories, surely.
Absolutely, and I think boxing just needs to waken up to this and realize, and there needs to be, people need to be educated on it, coaches and promoters and fighters as well. We just need to know the dangers, really, and certainly if I had read the book earlier on in my career, it may have changed things.
I tell you what, we've taken a wonderful left turn. We're meant to talk about Khan and Brook, a fight that sold out in 6 minutes, that's got the entire country talking, and you and I are talking about ways to limit the damage of fighters that are considering long careers. So, Kell Brook, 35 years of age, and I don't like to use the expression turn back the clock, because I'm not sure if he turned back the clock or if we just saw a very old and a very weary Amir Khan. But let's deal with Khan first. I'll say it. I don't ever want to see him anywhere near a boxing ring again.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. He's and I would hope he's sensible enough to understand that. I'm sure he's got enough money. I actually know for a fact that he's got enough money. He doesn't need to be fighting again. He's done everything that's ever been asked for him as a fighter. He's had a tremendous career. Almost a shame that he lost this fight, actually. Not saying that. I don't want to be derogatory to Kell Brook, but they'll be remembered for this fight, both these guys. But Khan's career has been better than that. You know what I mean? It's been a fabulous career.
Yeah, and in all fairness, Kell did say some wonderful things in victory about Amir and to Amir along those lines. We will hear from Dominic Ingle, who was in the corner with Kell and has known Kell since Kell was 7 or 8 years of age when he first walked into Brendan Ingle's fighting academy, unique fighting, crazy academy there in Winkerbank and Sheffield. We'll also hear from Tasha Jonas, a world champion at last, if under rather odd circumstances. That's later in the podcast. Let's hear now, though, from Kell Brook. I managed to get straight backstage of him. He was having his wraps cut off, and he'd just finished his obligatory and heavily financed interview with Sky. Then I got in and chatted to him, and he was still buzzing, but there was an oddness about him. There was a strange calm. He wasn't flying all over the place like sometimes fighters are in the dressing room 10 minutes after they've had their hands raised. And I put it to him, just what was it like? Just try and explain what it felt like.
I felt amazing, the feeling I got with my tune coming out, with the fans booing and cheering. It was an amazing feeling.
And you never seem to doubt your belief that you could not only win, but you could win the way you did, destructively.
Yeah, I knew that I could do it like that. Listen, I've known that from day one. It would just get in him, dragging him. I want you to know that it's never been me stopping this fight happening. Father fans, it's always been him. He's done his thing, because he always knew that probably that was going to happen. He always knew that was going to happen, and that wouldn't have progressed his career. So it took me at the last hurdle.
And in the fight, you had him so gone in several times, but he managed to come back. And there was an embrace at the end, and even a bit of embrace at the end of the fifth. What was said between the pair of you, Kell?
I just said, listen, you got some heart, took some big shots in there, Amir. You know, you got an art to like. You wanted to carry on and to do it. And anyone what gets in that ring with me, gets in and puts some gloves on and takes shots off me or any fighter, the respect has obviously got to be there. You know, no matter what. You know, I can put all that to bed. The bad blood. You know, as long as I got in there and he give the fans what they wanted. You know, I can be happy now. You know, and I can squash it.
And just tell me about your bandages, Kel, because there's a message on them. Just read it out to me.
The message says, "I told you." You know, because I always said I didn't do it exactly like I wanted. Where I wanted to look down at him and say, "I told you, Amir. I told you that had happened." But obviously the referee saved it because he were going to get brutally knocked out bad. You know, so. You know, like I said, I told you, I always knew in my heart that was going to happen.
And what now for Kell Brook after an extraordinary career so far?
I'm in fantastic shape. I want to thank Greg Marriott, my nutritionist. Greg Marriott, my nutritionist, put me in fantastic shape. You know, I felt fit in there. The weight were perfect. I felt like a teenager. I felt like 23 again.
And will you be back?
I don't know. I could do. You know, I'm going to sit down with the family. Obviously, my adrenaline's running. I'm still on a high. I'm going to look back at my career. I'm going to look at my kids in the face and just see, I'm still intact. And I can still talk a full sentence together. So I don't want to carry on my career too long,
So, Carl, just before I hear from Dominic Ingle, you heard him there. He said he's not quite sure what he's going to do. He's going to sit down with his family. And basically what that means is he's going to look at the offers that are out there. What's your gut feeling, Carl? What's your gut feeling about what he should or shouldn't do?
I think he should retire, and I don't want the people to jump on that comment and saying, what do I know? And he's had a great win, and there's money to be made. There is money to be made, of course. A big fight with either Conor Benn or Chris Eubank, plenty of money to be made. But how much is that worth really when potentially you don't remember your own name in 20 years' time? And that's the harsh reality of it. What they do, and I will give them credit in the Ingle gym, is they do a lot of body sparring, and they don't. Yeah. So maybe there's ways around it. I don't know, but if it was me, he's been in tough fights. He's had his face broken a couple of times. How much money does he need, really?
Yeah, there's a great story that Mickey Duff used to tell and Joe Bugner used to tell, and they both told the same story at different times, so it's nearly true. And it's basically that after Joe Bugner on this mad Sunday afternoon show in Las Vegas goes, I think, 10 or 12 rounds with Ron Lowe, and it's brutal, and Bugner ends up in hospital in ice baths for about 2 weeks. He's absolutely ruined. And this fight's a dreadful fight to watch, but it was just incredibly hard because Ron Lowe's a great fighter, and Joe Bugner was a great underestimated heavyweight. And Mickey Duff goes in the change room afterwards and says to him, "Look, Joe, it's terrific. We can get this fight. We can get that fight. We'll make loads of money." And Joe Bugner says something along the lines of, "Mickey, it's all very well having the money, but you've got to be able to count it." And I think that's basically what you're saying. So it's no good having all that money in the bank if you've lost the ability to actually add the sums up. So that was Kell Brook there, praising Amir Khan and also looking towards the future. And he's not quite sure where it's going to go. Dominic Ingle joins me now. Dom, listen, thanks for joining me, Dom. Let me ask you this, Dom, and I'll ask you straight away. What would you like Kell to do? Let's get straight to it.
Listen, there's three options. That Saturday night was a fantastic atmosphere. It would have been a great send-off for either fighter. And, really, realistically, Kell's got nothing to prove. He did have to put himself through it in that camp. And I think that's where the difference was, that, Kell kind of rolled back the years. He put everything into it. And, he came out of the ring afterwards and said that was one of the easiest fights I've ever had.
He made it look that way, yeah. And
the temptation's always going to be to have one last hurrah, but you don't want to be leaving that ring like Amir Khan did. Kell don't want to be doing that. But there are options. They're talking about Eubank because obviously he's with Sky, and they're talking about Conor Benn. And I think, if you're going to entertain the fight with Eubank, look, Kell's given away enough advantages over the years. He's got to come down somewhere, around 11-2, 11.56 or something like that. 156 for Eubank. And it's not beyond imagination of Conor Benn moving up, and making that fight around about somewhere under 11 stone. They're both interesting fights. But I think I'd be more leaning towards the Conor Benn one if it was going to come off. But like Kell said, in the heat of the moment and after the aftermath of the fight and the adrenaline, course he wants to have another fight, but then when you sit down and think about it in the broad light of day, you've got to think about going through that camp process again, doing that camp, spending time away. He doesn't really need to do it now at 35, and that's it. I've always said about Kelly, it's due to the motivation. If he gets motivated, he'll beat anybody. So it all rests with him how he wants to put himself through that camp again if he wants to do it.
And the good thing about those two fights, whether you want them to happen or you don't want them to happen, what you can't deny is that they would be enormous attractions. They would be massive events. And if the weight, could be sorted, and as you say, Kell maybe not giving away or having to give in like he has sometimes in the past, in theory, they'd be blockbusters, Dom. Blockbusters.
Yeah, they'd be massive. Steve, look, can you remember a night like Saturday night? No, take away the Anthony Joshua, he's obviously good for numbers. But for that fight, nobody expected Calmbrook, people talking well past his sell-by date to generate that kind of interest, the atmosphere. It was a fantastic night. We were all there. It was fantastic. You don't get many of those nights in British boxing anymore with below the heavyweights. And they would be massive fights. And like I say, Kell did have to jump through hoops for that fight with Con. That's fair enough. He had to bend a lot of ways. And, he came out on top. And you don't want to keep putting yourself in that position when you come into the back end of your career. You've got to go in at least a level playing field or, get the advantage. And, it's no secret. I don't rate Chris Eubank Jr. I just don't. And that's it. At least be a world champion. And he's talking about being a world champion, but Kell Brook's not the route for being a world champion. It's a money fight for him. Yeah. And he's 33. So, if he wants to, fight Kell Brook for the money, and it'll probably be his biggest payday, he's got to make a couple of sacrifices. He's got to come down
4 or 5 pounds.
Sorry?
He's got to come down 4 or 5 pounds. He's got to come down.
He's got to come down. He's got to put himself at a disadvantage. Kell's done it all his career, and same with Conor Benn. He's the new kid on the block. The shame is he's with a different promoter, but I'm sure that fight could be made. He could fight one then the other. Who knows? Yeah. But do you know what? Been having conversation with Billy Joe Saunders, and he fancies the Eubank fight, and that might be another option for down the line for Eubank. But there's some interesting combinations, Steve.
Now, listen, there are more than some interesting combinations. Dom, let me ask you a brutally honest question. Did you think that Amir Khan would have more left than he had?
Do you know what, Steve? You got to look and think. He took some big shots from 1 to 6. What would have normally toppled him over earlier in his career. Now, whether that was due to the gloves, because the gloves were, not the ones that we wanted, and they would have lessened the impact. But you have to give him credit for taking those heavy shots all the way through the 6 rounds. But look, I don't know. All I know is when he came to the press conference, he was starting his camp in America. Did he do any training previous to that? I don't know what his history was. Whereas Kell, I've said he was training for 7 months, and that's what you need. You need, when you've had time out, you can't do a 12-week camp to unravel, 2 years of inactivity. You've got to be training all the time. And the postponements for us, when they kept getting changed, suited us even better. Because, like I said, 12 weeks, prior 12 weeks of that fight, Kell was in great shape then at the press conference. Sure. So, he looked like Khan had got all overnight, but you just don't know what he was doing previous to his 12-week camp.
Yeah, no, absolutely you don't. Dom, you mentioned there that the gloves were not the ones that we wanted. When Kell got in the ring, he had to put the gloves on. He was being gloved up in the ring like they used to do with Commonwealth title fights back in the 70s and the 80s. Just talk us through what happened backstage, the delay. We heard it was the gloves, and then what happened in the ring and why it happened, if you can.
Look, there was...
What you can say, obviously.
There was something in the contract where they had to have a certain glove. And even though we had that certain glove, I don't think Khan's team was happy with it. And there was just a lot of shenanigans going off. And, we got Kell gloved up and warmed up. And, we went into the ring and they still weren't happy. So we changed them again. So there's lots of stuff going on. But, I was speaking to Robert Smith. Robert Smith was backstage and he said, Dominic, it's not about the glove, it's what's in the glove. And it's true, it is what's in the glove. It's the fist, it's the power. And, one of the reasons why maybe Khan stayed up a bit longer than he did is because, Kell didn't have the gloves that he was used to and that we wanted. And they're a bit more padded. So, it's all by the by. Realistically, Steve, if you're a good fighter, you can punch. You're going to be able to punch in no matter what gloves. But it added to the drama and the pantomime of it all, and it created interest. All the build up to the fight, put on a great event, and everybody's still messaging me now. What a great night! People won money, and they're all listen. The main thing is they all got value for money on that pay-per-view.
Yeah, it was certainly. As an event, it was right up there, and you're absolutely right. There was something about the noise in there. There was something about the emotion in there and the build-up, and it was a great event to be attached to. So, Dom, what is there a time? I know it's just hours after the fight, but is it your feeling you're going to speak to Kel in the next couple of days, speak to Ben Shalom in the next couple of days, and start to look at something, and maybe keep him lightly ticking over in case something comes up in, I don't know, May or June?
I don't think I'll speak to Kel this week. We've had enough for each other. We've had enough for each other for a couple of months, but we message. But listen, we like to have a break. But Ben Shalom's coming up to Sheffield, I think. So we'll have a talk to Ben when he comes up. I think he's coming up to see Kel and Terry, and strike while the iron's hot. And I think I'll speak to him at some point. But for now we're having a break. And I think if realistically we're in end of February now, I would imagine before Kel fights again, I wouldn't imagine it being. It's going to be some time. It's got to be sometime May, June, late June, because he's got to have a bit of time off, and he's got to get back into camp.
And equally, Dom, and finally, if Kel calls you up when you get off the phone from me and says, Dom, I've looked at it, I've spoken to everybody around me, and now I'm speaking to you. That's it. I've done it. I'm going out on a high. What would be your reaction then?
Fantastic, because look, you don't want to be in the game too long. He's 35. That would be a great win to go out on. It was a fantastic night, and he can walk around with his head held high for the rest of his life now on that fight. He settled the score, and I'd say fine. We've had a good run. We have had a good run. It's finished on a high. I wouldn't want him to finish, like so many fighters do. They go on too long. Danny Williams, Roy Jones, there's no point, it's hard to go out on the top of the game, but, Marvin Hagler did it, and although he got beat by Leonard, he was a good fighter. But, for me, I'd say, fine, Kel, no, I won't be talking him into it. I'd be more than happy, for him to do that.
Dom, listen, thanks so much for your time. Kel Brook can walk around for the rest of his life with his head held high.
100%.
That's it. That's good enough for me. Dom, thanks for your time. Say hello to everybody for me.
Thanks, Steve.
So Dominic Ingle there, Carl, talking about the options. Chris Eubank losing some weight, maybe a fight with Conor Benn. But really, I sort of sensed something in his voice that he would be very happy if, to quote, and I'll give you the quote again, Kel Brook could walk away and for the rest of his life, he could have his head held high. What would you like for Kel?
I would agree with that statement, and I would like him to walk away. Like I said, him and Khan have both had fantastic careers, but I suppose it's a bit of a shame for Khan anyway, but not for Kel, that this is the fight they're going to be remembered for. And it's always good to go out on top, I think. I wanted to do it. I wanted to beat Jamel Herring and go out on top as a 3-weight world champion. Wasn't to be, but I wasn't going to hang around and try and get another fight just to get another win to finish my career. I knew when it was time to call it a day. And I think this is the ideal place for Kel Brook to leave the sport.
What are offers for you, Carl, to have some kind of goodbye and thank you and some sort of Belfast homecoming after Jamel? I mean, I'm not bothered whether you would actually agree to them, but were there decently serious offers for you to have that?
No real official offers or anything like that, but there was a few kind of conversations. But I think because people saw my stance and they saw that, I was done. Like, I literally retired in the ring, and people believed it. I wasn't messing about. I was serious. I was being sincere, and there was no real conversations. There's been a few conversations about these kind of legend type fights, but I'm not even going to go near that. I feel like you need to be retired about 10 years before you take up one of them exhibitions. But there's a guy who's reached out to me looking to fight me already, which is mad, but yeah, I'll leave it alone.
I think we'll see Carl Frampton against Marco Antonio Barrera in Las Vegas in 12 years' time. I really do, because that's we're gonna have whole shows of these. You know that, Carl. That's what I'm thinking.
I think
12-ounce gloves. 12-ounce gloves that look like they're 8-ounce gloves or 10-ounce gloves. Big. I'm convinced we're going to have dozens of these, man. Anyway, that's neither here nor there. You touched on something there when we were talking about Amir earlier, and we were talking about whether and when he realised it was on a lost cause. And I think it was quite early in the fight. Because you had that a bit in your last fight, didn't you? That sense that you knew, oh boy, it's not here.
Yeah, I couldn't. Like I've said this before, Jamel Herring wasn't a particularly fast fighter. Although he was a lot bigger on me, he wasn't very fast. But I couldn't get out of the road of his shots, and I think maybe a few years previous to that, I may have been able to. Not saying it definitely, would have, but I had a better chance certainly of getting away. And he was hitting me. I just couldn't get out of the road of his jab, which wasn't the fastest that I've been in with, and I remember just sitting down at the end of round one going, this is going to be a hard night, and that's a difficult situation to be in.
Yeah. It's at times like that when I think that fighters really show what they can do and what they are, and it's sometimes in defeat they show us a lot more than they've shown us in victory. And that night you did, and I'm not just saying that because you're on. And I think we saw a bit of that with Khan the other night. That he knew it was lost cause. There's a moment when he went back after the 5th round, Khan, and he was right in front of me, and I was looking right at him. And the various corner people with all sorts of Americans were in there talking, and they blanked them out. And he was just looking across the ring and thinking, I've got to get up and go back into this. And this is a total lost cause.
Yeah, I think one thing that Khan will be happy with is he went out swinging, and that's a bit like me. I didn't go out on my knee or anything like that. The corner threw a towel in for me. The referee stopped him, but I went out swinging. My door has just went there, Steve, and I'm going to have to get it.
That's birthday cakes. Go and get birthday cakes, right, son. Go on. You go get your birthday cakes. I know I've been asking for emails over the last few weeks, and they've been coming in. I've not been reading them. Sorry about that. I am going to try to get a couple out today. And the emails are quite simple. It's 5liveboxing@bbc.co.uk. And you can use the number 5, or you can use the 4 letters, FIVE. 5liveboxing@bbc.co.uk. Send them in. We read them out. Hi, Bunce. Long-time listener, first time contacting the show. Compelled to after the Brook demolition job on Khan at the weekend. 2 questions for the pod. And I'll give one of these to you, Carl. Where do you rank Saturday's Brook performance? And in his career, obviously. And what chance would you give that version of Brook against either Conor Benn or Eubank? Well, I'll tell you, we'll both answer the Conor Benn and Eubank thing. Who knows? It'll be entertaining if it happens. And then this guy who's called Tom Warbank, he adds, I personally think Brook proved what I've always thought, that he's a stronger, hungrier and better boxer than Khan, and still able to operate at world level, just not pound for pound level. I think both the Ben and Eubank fights would be huge domestic events. We've talked about that. They would. Just like this weekend, and a big test for both. Not quite sure about that. I think Eubank might be a bit fresh and a bit big, but hey-ho. Do you think either of them could be realistically made? Well, I think the Eubank fight could be made because they're both under the same banner, and it would be great to hear your views on the above. Well, I've squeezed in a couple of my views there. Carl, where would you rank Kel's performance on Saturday in his overall career? Tom Warbank wants to know.
Doesn't come close to the biggest win of his career, which was Sean Porter. In terms of what he actually done, he went to America and took a title off a champion. But it'll be the performance that he's remembered for more than anything else. The guy mentioned in the question that he's still labeled not at elite level, but he's world class. I don't know if he is anymore. I really don't. I think I would. Yeah,
You're right.
Get out the top, get out now. He's went out in the biggest win of the biggest win, not really the best win, but the biggest win of his career.
Yep.
I'm sure he's got plenty of money. Just get out and forget about this. You need to take more from boxing than it takes from you, and there's not many do that.
Yeah. And you're absolutely right there, Carl. There's a big difference between the best win of your career and the biggest win of your career, and the best fight of your career and the biggest fight of your career. Thanks very much for sending that in, Tom. Keep them coming. 5liveboxing@bbc.co.uk. So it's a very lively undercard in Manchester. Lots of kids, lots of young guys. Fraser Clark, Olympic bronze medalist, made his debut. That was entertaining. It lasted a round. There were an awful lot of fights, but one that sort of caught the imagination. In fact, the crowd really showed their appreciation of it was Natasha Jonas. Miss GB, as she is known. She failed in a world title fight against Terry Harper at super feather. Then she moved up to lightweight and she lost a tight decision to Katie Taylor. She lost, but it was a tight decision, just like their quarterfinal at the Olympics back in 2012. And then she was offered a shot, not at light welter, not at welter, but up at light middle or super welter, as they prefer to call it. I know that you're like me, Carl, you still call it light middle. She had one opponent, and I quite liked the first opponent because the girl wasn't that big. Then she ended up with a separate opponent, a different opponent, a girl called Chris Namus from Uruguay, who was a big lump. She had shoulders like a butterfly swimmer. And she'd gone the full 10 rounds with a girl called Emma Kozin, who then went the full 10 rounds with Claressa Shields recently. So there was a form line in this girl, Namus. She showed up and she wore high heels and she looked about 7 inches taller than Natasha Jonas. But Jonas remained calm. She's got the form. And at the weigh-in, Namus was only 5 ounces above the welterweight limit, and Natasha was 2.5 pounds above it. And on the night, well, it was an absolute massacre, Carl. It was one-way traffic. Every single punch that Natasha threw up 3 or 4 weights from where she first fought for a world title was wobbling. She looked like John the Beast Mugabe, feasting on people on his way. She did. It was John the Beast Mugabe, not Natasha Jonas.
It was a great performance, and I suppose you have to give her all the credit in the world for jumping up the divisions. What seems like, I know it's not, but going from lightweight to light middleweight, it seems like there's probably about 10 divisions in there. Only there's a few, but it's a mad jump. And credit to her for taking on the bigger girl and beating her. But it kind of highlights, although women's boxing is on the rise at the minute, it just kind of highlights the strength of it when someone can do that, jump up the divisions and lose titles at super featherweight and lightweight, but win a world title at light middleweight. Doesn't make a lot of sense really, but she done it, so credit to her. And the opponent coming in, the heavier girl, typically, the bigger girl coming in 5 ounces. It's just, it's like, just reeks of inexperience.
Yeah.
You know, Jonas came in heavier on her, but I have to give her all the credit in the world. Fair play to her. I'm delighted for her. I really am.
Yeah. Listen, I am as well. When I managed to get backstage with her, in fact, she was just going in to see the drug inspectors and give some bloods, and I managed to get back and speak to her. And I've got to tell you, before we hear from her, Carl, you know, sometimes when you win, sometimes you're ecstatic, you're flying, you're cuddling everybody, you're high-fiving, and Ricky Hatton, you would have a Guinness out, and your Derek Chisora would be eating, you know, pieces of chicken, and, you know, the way they do, or no, he eats burgers, doesn't he, hamburgers, and everyone's ecstatic. And sometimes when you win, and I'm sure this happened to you sometimes, you get back to the dressing room, and you're not flying, you're still not dazed, but it's, maybe it hasn't sunk in yet. And that's when I was standing with her, it was almost like I had to wave my hand in front of her to say, come on, you've just won the world title. Because she seemed still in shock and awe. Here's Natasha Jonas in the dressing room not 10 minutes after her hand had been raised.
You know what? I was trying to enjoy the moment, stay calm and do a million things, you know, make it crisp, make it clean, and I can't even remember. It was brilliant. At the end, I remember it was brilliant.
Was it hard keeping control of your emotions when you got in the ring? Because that was a serious roar, 19,000 people, and everyone in there willing you on.
Yeah, it's been a long time since. Obviously, I fought in November last year, but it's not like the crowd out there. You know, they're all geared up and ready for the big fight, Amir Khan and Kelbrook. So, I wanted to make a statement. I wanted to put on a performance, and I did that. So,
did you think you could hurt her? I mean, in the preparations, in the work you've been doing, did you think, you know what, I'll catch her with a clean sheet, I can hurt her, I can drop her, I can stop her?
I always think that, but Joe was trying to keep me level-headed and say, you know, she should. But you know, she's been in with bigger girls, naturally bigger girls, and lasted the 10 rounds. And she's been in with the one that Clarissa fought with. Kozin. She's been in with Mary, the Canadian, the Carey.
Big old lumps.
Yeah, and she's been with Barack House, and she went the distance. So when, you know, when that it was in mind, I was thinking it's going to be 10 rounds, it's going to be hard rounds, and I was shocked on the scales that she actually came in light, because I'd been training to punch off and keep off a 12 stone girl, 11 stone, rehydrate, you're 12 stone. So I've been training for that, and when she weighed in light, I thought, you've played into my hands here.
Tash, it's been a long old journey from walking into the club when you, as you used to call yourself, you're carrying a few pounds just to get fit. Stop it. I mean, it's been a journey, hasn't it?
Yeah, and you know what? That's what life's about. And years when time's passed, these are the nights you'll remember, and I'll be telling my grandkids, no doubt, your nanny did this.
Listen, when she gets up in the first round, there's about 11 seconds left. What was going through your mind then? Because she was gone at that point, but at the same time, I know Joe was in your head going, "Don't fall in, don't get sloppy."
Exactly that, and I've been guilty of it. I know how to get people where I want them, but sometimes I get giddy and I overcommit, and then I get caught myself. So it was just about keeping my composure, like I said, and keeping me calm, not reacting emotionally, and just doing what I needed to do.
Natasha Jonas there, and there are fights at welterweight, there are fights at light welterweight. Chantel Cameron's out there somewhere, not that anyone really fancies fighting Chantel Cameron, to be perfectly honest with you, but there are all sorts of fights. So the bottom line is, she's got that belt, and she hasn't had to beat a Katie Taylor, but she pushed Katie Taylor. Who knows? She could go down to welterweight and fight Jessica McCaskill. It would be an incredible fight. I'm absolutely delighted for her, and I just love the idea that she could sit down with her grandkids and she could say to her grandkids, "Nanny did this." That's a good line. That's the first time I've ever interviewed someone, and that person's a world champion, and she has said, "Nanny did this," and in retelling the story. And you touched on a point there, Carl, and it does sort of highlights the good and the bad of the women's game at the moment. The good is that there's opportunities, and if you're a good fighter, you are going to rise. And the bad is that there are too many women in the game that still need an awful lot of time before they get to this level. Emma Kozin, the girl that lost to Clarissa Shields, is one, and this girl, who of course was beaten by Kozin.
Yeah, you've got the top girls and the top quality fighters. There's no one really in the middle, and then you've got the top girls and then the poor ones. There's no real middle ground, but it's on the rise, Steve, and you can't really deny that. And it's down to girls like Natasha Jonas and Katie Taylor and Chantel Cameron, Clarissa Shields in America, and Serrano as well. It's on the rise, and we'll not be having, we'll not be talking about these issues in 10 years' time. It's just going to keep getting bigger and better, and the girls will improve.
Yeah. And by the way, before people think I'm being biased here and in some way kicking women's boxing, there are some dreadful men who have fought for versions of the world title over the last 30 years. I mean, dreadful. Some men as bad as the woman we saw in the ring the other day, men that should not have had their opportunity. Maybe not on massive bills in Las Vegas or massive bills in Manchester or massive bills in Belfast, but there's plenty of men that slipped under the radar and didn't deserve the shot and shouldn't have had the shot. This weekend, Carl, it's a massive weekend. You're going to be with me, if I'm not mistaken, in Glasgow on Saturday, when we finally get to see Josh Taylor on home soil. He's got all four of those light welterweight belts, defending against Jack Catterall, who is unbeaten himself. What's interesting about this fight, not only is it going to be a special night, 13,000 tickets sold out at the SSE in Glasgow, but it's two guys that you know well. You've shared the gym, the camps, and you've been around the two of them for a long time.
Yeah, I really, they're friends. Both of these guys are my friends. First of all, I trained alongside Josh Taylor. He had his debut on my undercard in America. He fought on a couple, mad to say, it's great. I love saying that, talking about these great fighters who fought in your undercard.
Yeah, that's quite cool.
Yeah, Tyson Fury and Dillian White, both fighters who fought my undercard as well. Far a few in.
Who are they?
I'm really excited about the atmosphere. I think it's going to be incredible. The Scots are mad. I think that they're noisy. They get behind their own. They're very, very passionate. But I think that the support, I know Jack has sold quite a few tickets. That kind of Scottish-English rivalry, it's great, isn't it, really? And I can't wait for the atmosphere.
So Josh Taylor defending his IBF, WBA, WBC and WBO light welterweight titles on Saturday against Jack Catterall. And it's also a return to the venue for Taylor, the venue where he won the Commonwealth Games gold in 2014. That was an emotional run, I can tell you. 5 wins for gold in 8 days. He delighted a nation. Now, at the SSE, Taylor won his first world title in 2019, beating the previously unbeaten Ivan Baranchyk for the IBF version. That was a brilliant display. In fact, Taylor's last 6 opponents have been unbeaten. 6 men that are unbeaten. That includes Catterall. Of course, that's going some. He's the best fighter in Britain. Not the biggest. Not the one with the biggest following. Not the one that's best known. But he's the best fighter in Britain. It's as simple as that. And this is Taylor at home, at his best, and on a mission. And he's a very dangerous man when he gets on a mission. And he can also be, I'm going to say this, I'm not going to upset him, he can also be a little bit tricky to interview during the week of a fight. So I grabbed hold of him already, and I did it with a little bit of time to spare so that I didn't get the spiky, unpleasant Josh Taylor. That's the Josh Taylor I like in the week of a fight, to be perfectly honest with you. And I started by asking him about the pressure, about fighting in front of those home fans, fighting with all of the expectation on your shoulders.
No, I don't feel any of it at all. I actually I relish it. You know, I take it all in, and I love performing in front of a crowd. You know, period where it's for me or against me, I love performing in front of a big crowd on the big stage in the big arena. You know, so I feel I really thrive under it. So yeah, I don't feel pressure at all. It doesn't affect me in any way. You know, I really actually quite like it. You know, I've actually hated the last 2 years where it's been in front of no one and in front of restricted fans. It's been really hard for me to get up for the fights in terms of, because there's no fans there, not being no fans there, you know, and no atmosphere. I love the atmosphere that the fans create and
the noise
the big
they create.
shows, big events, the lights. I love it. You know, I really love it. I really do thrive under it.
Let's go on to the fight. Jack Catterall, he's the guy that helped make that Ramirez fight a reality by agreeing to whatever he agreed to the step aside or whatever. You know, obviously it's all no one really talks about it, but he allowed you to take his place and beat Ramirez, unify all the 4 belts. Now it's Catterall's turn. He's kept his head down, Jack. He's kept his head down, and he's not the type of guy, really. He's not the type of guy who's going to jump all over you or try and get in your face. He's not Regis Prograis, is it? Do you prefer it if a fighter does give you something to maybe not dislike them, but to sort of have a little bit of edge as you get closer to fight the first bell?
No, I don't mind it, Steve. I just treat them as they treat me. You know, I just treat the fighters and the opponents the way they act towards me. I'm easy Aussie is the way it goes. You know, sure. If they're nice and respectful, I've been like that before in the past. But listen, I don't need anything to turn my aggression into someone to fight someone. That's there in abundance. You've seen it before.
Yeah,
you know,
I have.
I don't need any incentives to want to hurt someone and hurt them. You know, so I don't need that. It's there in abundance.
In that last 48 hours, 36 hours, 24 hours, can you feel yourself changing, Josh? Or are you the same person you think the day of the weigh-in as you were, say, 6 weeks earlier?
Yeah, a little bit. You know, a little bit. I just tend to change into getting ready for a fight. You know, my mental side changes. I'm getting ready for a fight now. I'm ready to go, and you know, turn into, you know, I'm ready for preparing myself for a hard 12-round fought match, toe-to-toe fight, and be prepared to go into the trenches, dig deep, and go to war if I really have to. You know, so it's just me getting ready to fight, and by that point, the talking, I don't want to talk. I just want to hit you. I don't want to talk. I want to get my hands on you and punch you in the face or punch you wherever.
And what about talking to other people? Because I remember years ago interviewing Steve Collins, and Steve Collins did a thing during training camp. He didn't speak to his wife, he didn't speak to his kids, he didn't speak nicely to his mum and dad, he didn't shave, he had to lock himself away. Are you like that in the last week? Could you have a polite conversation with your family members?
I'm okay. I mean, I'm okay, and I'm better now as well as I was before.
Okay.
The lead up to the Prograis fight, that was the last camp that I did everything myself. You know,
good point.
I did all my nutrition myself. I did my weight cut myself. I did everything myself. You know, and after that fight, obviously what I've learned now with bringing on nutritionists and S&C coaches and bringing in a little bit of sports science and doing it smarter, I'm making it so much easier on myself,
Sure.
What I've learned through nutrition wise and the way I was doing the weight before was crazy, and by the time midway through fight week came, I just wanted to rip anybody's head off.
I know.
I was so crabby and so frustrated and ready to go but I was doing the weight wrong. I was doing that side of it wrong. Now, with the knowledge I've acquired, now, and I'm helping with nutritionists, and they do the weight cut with me, and everything's so much easier. So I'm a bit more relaxed, but also in that frame of mind where you're saying something the wrong way, I might take it the wrong way. Do you know what I mean?
Sure.
But that's just me getting ready to fight.
It's going to be a special night. That's going to be live and exclusive on 5 Live on Saturday evening, 10 p.m. And there will be a special 5 Live program on Thursday night and also an additional pod. And Carl mentioned there Tyson Fury and Dillian Whyte. And we're recording this on a Monday. And right now there is a chance that there'll be an announcement this week. And then there's also a chance that there'll be no announcement this week. So that's that's to be continued. If there is an announcement, we will deliver an extra pod here on 5 Live. There's also a world title fight on Sunday at the badly damaged Dome, which we're told, or the old Dome, the O2. We're told the roof's going to be in a state of repair, so there will be boxing on Sunday, and that's Lawrence Okoli in a hard fight against a guy called Michał Cieślak from Poland, who I think is a particularly good fight. What's really interesting on that, and just quickly, I don't know if you've seen, and it's only been announced in the last few hours, the opponent that Galal Yafai's got. Brand new Olympic gold medalist. He's been sparring a lot with Sonny Edwards, flyweight world champion, and a good sparrer, by the way. We were talking about sparring earlier on. He's got a young Mexican kid who's lost a couple, but he's won some hard fights. He's also been 10 rounds long, and it's a 10-round fight. Galal Yafai is turning pro in a really, I think, Carl, I haven't absolutely thoroughly forensically looked at it. A guy called Carlos Bautista probably. I got to tell you, I think this is the hardest debut I can remember for a British boxer ever.
Yeah, listen,
Ever.
I don't know much about the opponent, but the fact that he's starting with a 10-round fight, that's, Lomachenko done that, you know what I mean? And there's no one else really does that. So obviously they want to fast track him, but if he's still in there, round 7, he'll know his arse from his elbow. I think he'll realise how tough a game this is.
And on that Jack and Josh bill, which is a great way to phrase it, there's, I think, just calling him sort of former amateur star doesn't even come close. Kurt Walker, he had something like 170 international amateur contests. I mean, he seemed to have been in every world championships going back to Havana in 1974. Olympic trials, Europeans. He's been everywhere, Carl. He was probably in training camp with you about 17 years ago.
Yeah, do you know what? I just kind of turned pro when he was coming onto the scene and starting to make a name for himself. I actually sparred him at the very start because I'm good friends with his old amateur coach, a guy called Noel Reynolds. So Kurt's a lovely kid and very, very, very skillful. And hopefully, boxing in Ireland, Northern Ireland, at the minute is buzzing and booming. Hopefully he can be another star to kind of take off and be topping bills at some point in the future.
So that's the weekend's boxing. It's 10 p.m. on Saturday for Josh Taylor defending all 4 of his world title belts against Jack Catterall. And that's the bill that Kurt Walker is boxing on. That's at 10 p.m. on Saturday. And on Sunday at 9 p.m, Lawrence Okoli defends his WBO cruiserweight title against Michał Cieślak, also on 5 Live. And there will be an extra pod and there will be a 5 Live extra show on Thursday of this week. And as I mentioned there already, and I'm going to mention it again, there possibly will be a Dillian Whyte and Tyson Fury extra pod and announcement. Who knows? That's the way it works. So that's the weekend sorted, and last weekend was very special. Tasha Jonas getting a world title, Big Fraser Clark getting off the mark as a professional, and Mir Khan, well, I hope it's the end of his career, and what a brilliant career it's been. Perhaps we'll do a special in the summer. And as for Kell Brook, well, I don't know if he turned back time or time stood still, but he was at times brilliant. Thanks to Dominic Ingle for joining me, and thanks, of course, to Carl Frampton for being with me here on 5 Live. It's going to be a busy week. It's already been a busy year. And to end today's show, I think it's only fitting, on account of me being in front of 19,000 people in Manchester, to let a man who's been in front of 50,000 people in Manchester, who's been in front of 90,000 people in Argentina and Brazil and all over the world, an icon, a legend, a king in many ways, and also a great big boxing fan and a softie. Here's Noel Gallagher to say goodbye.
It was great. The atmosphere was great, and because it could have been a bit of an anticlimax in the end, and you know, because you don't know what kind of condition they're going to turn. I mean, you know, they're all ripped and all that, but it looked like Kel wanted it more to me, and actually Kel made the fight. Amir didn't really look like he was into it from as soon as Kel hit him in the first round. It was only going to go one way, I think.
I was quite happy when it was stopped. I don't know about you.
Me too. I thought it was a great decision because you didn't want to. Khan has got a lot of heart, right, and he would have stuck in there until it got stopped. The referee seemed like he sensed it and stopped him getting bashed up. You don't want him getting bashed up.
How does that rank in your boxing experiences here at the MEM? We won't even do Las Vegas trips with Ricky, but at the MEM here, how does that rank?
I mean, they're all, look, when you get a fight, it's like the big world title fight or a 50-50 fight, which you can't call. No one's calling that on the way in.
No one.
Not even you lot are calling it.
No, not me.
I've listened to it all week and everyone's like, they didn't know what was going to happen until the fight started. And when you get big nights like that and it lives up to the billing, it's great. Really great.
No, thanks so much for your time.
Let's get ready to rumble! 5 Live Boxing.